I'm Bill Berten Shaw for WOR News Talk Radio with another edition of Community Concerns, observing our 30th consecutive broadcast year of Community Concerns right here on WOR News Talk Radio. Joining us here today at Community Concerns is a noted attorney and author, but Andrew J. Schatkin, right?
Right.
Yeah, Schatkin, okay.
Okay.
But first I would like to thank Reverend Dr. Timothy Burkett, founder of Church Alive Ministries in the Bronx and past director of the Bronx Division of the Council of Churches, and producer and host of numerous cable TV programs here in New York and New Jersey, for suggesting Andrew J. Schatkin. Now, you've been a practicing attorney for 35 years here in New York and Long Island. You've been an adjunct professor in criminal law at St. Francis College, also in New York. I believe you've been written up in every edition of Who's Who. You're the author of 2 books, 5 chapters in books, and 150 professional publications. How do you budget your time?
Well, I tell you, these things aren't done immediately. Obviously, it's over some years that I produce this work, and I have to say that I'm very happy that it's been mentioned, because not everybody would say that, and I'm very grateful that I've been given the opportunity to present myself and what I think is important in life and in law.
Now, Mr. Schatkin, you involved with criminal law and civil litigation, and also, I believe, you're involved with employment law.
That's correct.
Well, tell us a little bit about that.
Well, my concern as a lawyer is I think I am concerned with civil rights, and these areas that I handle, such as criminal law and employment law, are areas where the individual is pitted against the institutions of society. And of course, I'm not going to criticize institutions or laws, but I have a strong view that people should have the opportunity to be heard in the courts and elsewhere, because it's the best system. I mean, unless individuals, that's what I'm concerned about. Obviously, I have a business, and I'm concerned about business people. But when individuals are fully heard and given full opportunities in the system, we all benefit. For example, I mean, if the individual, who may not have a great deal of money, say, nevertheless is given the opportunity to go to medical school, who knows what that person might be able to do for society. To me, a society which includes, which assists, which brings the maximum opportunities to every person. And let me emphasize, I have to emphasize this, I think it's very important. To me, any racial, national origin, sexual distinctions, or any distinctions, whatever you are as a person, I'm afraid that I just don't particularly have that concern. The person who comes to my office is going to be seen as an individual, and I'm going to seek to assist them and enforce their rights to the best of my ability.
Now, you were involved with Villanova Law School at Hunter College, and you are a graduate of Princeton Theological Seminary.
Right.
And in front of me, I have their book, Essays on the Christian Worldview and Others, Political, Literary, and Philosophical. It's published by Hamilton Books.
That's correct.
How did you come to write the book?
Well, as you can see, I did obtain an MDiv degree from Princeton Theological Seminary in theology and in religious studies. You might say it affected me over the years. To me, a religious commitment involves a commitment and concern to society as a whole, to the individual person. I'm particularly concerned, on present society. I have no criticism of business. I think they provide jobs for people, and they have a very important role. But I think that a person should be judged as an individual and not necessarily on their race, and you might say on their economic status.
Now, in your book, you also deal with sin and evil.
Mm-hmm.
Tell us about it.
Well, this is a very difficult topic because people have different views on these issues, which I respect. Obviously, I want to make clear that if I meet someone and I have a conversation, to me, it's a learning experience for me. So I reject no one's views or opinions until I've heard them out and talked to them. But I think it's fairly clear that there is a situation in the world which is, one might say, people do engage in activities which are not favorable to most of us. I mean, I don't say why. I do things, I'm sure, that are not the best. And I regret it. I'm not happy about it. But the fact of the matter is, there have been in the 20th century 6 genocides. This is, unfortunately, a fact. Human behavior, if not controlled, can be not the best. Let me put it that way. Whether you define it as sin or evil, there is something possibly in human nature that impels people in the wrong direction.
Now, in your book, you point out, don't discard the elderly.
Right.
Tell us about that.
Well, the reason why I wrote that, American society and possibly world society, I really don't know. I only have lived here. I haven't lived anywhere else. But there is in America a youth image, or you might say a youth culture. I think that is possibly it's the product of advertising. It might be, but I think it's not valid because I think every person has to be recognized not for their looks or their youth, but for who they are, at whatever stage of life they are. To me, every person at every point, to me, has something to offer.
Also, you have love your neighbor commandment.
Now, to me, that is extremely important. It is a commandment in the Gospels, in the Bible, and to me, it's a simple position that as we go through life, I think let me put it this way: if as persons, you might say, whatever our talents are, our abilities are, should be used, hopefully, as a gift of God in the service of others, not necessarily to gain, to oppress, which is unfortunately does occur. Individual gain is not the object. One would hope to bring people into relationships, which is loving your neighbor. It's forming positive relationships.
For those of you who may have tuned in late, we're talking with Andrew J. Schatkin, Schatkin, I should say.
Schatkin.
I always want to change
It's okay.
Andrew J. Schatkin, noted New York and Long Island attorney. And we're also discussing his book, Essays on the Christian Worldview and Others, Political, Literary, and Philosophical. And if you'd like to get in touch with him or look up some of his works, his website is www.schatkin.com. That's www.schatkin.com. And you'll probably have this CD on there very shortly because you're going to take one with you. His phone number is area code 516-932-8120, 516-932-8120. Now, you talk about your very interesting chapter about your mother in the book.
I do.
Tell us about that.
Well, I think all of us are deeply affected by our parents, and are, so to speak, are molded by our parents. My mother was a person who didn't seek things for herself. She was a well-educated woman, was conversant in several languages, and yet she chose a life of service to her family and to others as much as she was able to. She had a fairly distinct religious commitment, but I don't think that it's the person, not their thoughts of religion. As a person, she never raised herself up, and in an attempt to, which often happens, unfortunately. I'm sure I've been guilty of it. Everybody is, in terms of putting others down. She led a life of as a wife, as a mother, supportive, and I think she realized that maybe perhaps I wasn't quite like that, as with that degree of humility. So I see myself, as I said at the end of that particular essay, I saw her when she died. I saw her at the funeral, and I think to myself, well, Andrew, I know your failings. I know your selfishness. I know you're thinking about yourself, and you may be sure I excuse it and forgive it.
Now, do you feel in this society today that happiness is possible?
Happy people will seek happiness, I think, in the wrong places. People, first of all, there is a group of people that will think to attain happiness through the acquisition of material goods, or you might say making a good living, or as much money as they might want. I believe that's a mistake. I don't think that leads to happiness. What I think leads to happiness is involvement with others, relating to others, forming relationships, getting out of yourself into concern for others. I think there are other elements, perhaps having a job. We all need a degree of income to pay our bills, and perhaps happiness may be, although there are people who are not married, I mean, perhaps within the family structure, some sort of family structure, might be bring us a degree of happiness. But I also think to me, happiness, the best way to attain it is to hopefully forget about yourself and involve yourself in others.
Whatever happened to sin and evil?
Well, unfortunately, if you read the newspaper every day, it's quite apparent that human nature is somewhat problematic. I include myself. I mean, obviously, I'm not perfect. Nobody is. But unfortunately, it takes forms that we might define as evil. Yes, I think there is evil in the world. I think people have that potential. Not everybody, but the potential may be realized, unfortunately, when people, I think this is a fairly accurate historical fact, some people, when they get a sufficient degree of power, are capable of anything. It could be a Hitler, it could be a Stalin, it could be anybody.
Now, is there an idea of a Christian society today, the measure of God's love?
I would never, first of all, I have no prejudice against any religious group or person. All religions, to me, have something to offer, and I would be willing to listen to them. But to me, if there were to be the kind of society that I would like, it would include as many views and persons of whatever race and nationality as possible, within a framework perhaps of sharing, and less focused on individual competition.
Andrew J. Schatkin, I'd like to thank you very much for taking time out of your busy schedule to join us today on Community Concerns. His book is The Essays on the Christian Worldview and Others, Political, Literary, and Philosophical. It's published by Hamilton Books. I guess it's available on the internet.
It's available at Amazon.com.
Right.
And at BN.com. And also, it can be ordered at an 800 number from the publisher. Could you turn around?
Okay. It's on the back here, right?
It's right on the back there, Bill. If I could read it out, if I could. I mean, everybody wants to sell their books, huh?
Okay.
Okay, hold on. 1-800-462-6420.
This week's edition of Community Concerns was produced and directed by Ben Soto. Guest coordination provided by Radio and TV Roundup Productions. Our theme was composed and performed by Cy Simon, and I'm Bill Berten, show up for Community Concerns at WOR News Talk Radio, wishing each and every listener a good week ahead.